right. I think I love the faces I see here. Good afternoon. All right, so let's get to it. My name is Arinze Onye. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a product manager, and I'm a program manager. I'm choosing to introduce myself that way because of the topic that we'll be discussing this afternoon. How authenticity drives creativity in tech. Before we get started, I want to share a quote, a very popular quote from the amazing Steve Jobs. You know, he once said, "Find the courage to follow your heart and your intuition. They somehow already know what you want to become. Every other thing is secondary." Now, during this conversation, we're going to try to unpack that quote and see how we can recreate that philosophy or methodology to choosing what we do in tech in our own personal career journeys. Is that fine? Are you ready to go? If you are with me, say hi. If you are not with me, say nay. All right. So, I'm going to introduce you to a concept that was popularized by Elon Musk, and he calls it thinking by analogy versus thinking from first principles. Can we recap that? What's the first one? What's the second one? What does it mean to think by analogy? It's more like pattern recognition, where we make decisions by trying to observe what other people are already doing and then imply our own decisions from there. He's studying computer science. I think I should study computer science too. Fintech is getting funded. Let me build a fintech too. I think that's where I will blow. AI is a new trend. Let me just change my startup name to AI and I'll become the next millionaire. Thinking by analogy. What's the problem with thinking by analogy? Elon Musk called it a lazy mental thinking, where we sort of outsource our thinking to other people. We tend to depend on trends, depend on what people in our social circle are already doing, or depend on things that are already successful to make our own decisions. That does not make sense. And I believe that's one of the biggest reasons why our nation, Nigeria, and our continent, Africa, is still where it is today. We tend to reason from analogy all the time. Oh, the US is using this now. Let us do it as well. Oh, China is now doing this. Let us do it as well. There's no original thinking. There's no authentic thinking. A good example, I think during the last election, there was a popular politician, just because of the back and forth and banter and rebanter on Twitter, he just decided, let's build our own Twitter. And then he built his own Twitter. I think he called it Crowy. Guys, how many of you use Crowy today? Can you wave to me? Nobody. Why? The people who built Twitter in the first place, or that's now called X, did not build it because they wanted to attack another platform. They built it because they identified a need and they iteratively figured out what solution would address that need. If we had taken that same approach, we would have realized that building a national Twitter would likely not scale or appeal to the audience as much as a place where I can see other global audience. Does that make sense? Now let's go to the next one. Thinking from first principles. Can you say thinking from first principles? What does it mean to think from first principles? It means to break down things to the most fundamental blocks and then rebuilding from there. It means I will not depend on what others have said about the subject. It means I will not depend on what others have done before. I'll try to be original. I'll try to be authentic. I'll try to put in the mental effort to figure out what are the foundational blocks of this subject to start with. Does it make sense? And when I figure out the foundational blocks, I'll then rebuild from there. Are you following? All right. A good example is Elon Musk's story, where after he had sold PayPal, for about $1.8 billion, I think. Sorry, I think I got that figure wrong, so I'll just skip that. Right, but he had about $180 million to himself as the largest shareholder then amongst the other founders in PayPal. He decided, well, I have two interests right now, renewable energy and space exploration. I'm going to venture into space exploration. So he goes, let me get a rocket and fly to the space. Who has a rocket? Russia has a rocket. So he goes to Russia and asks them, how much is your rocket? And they gave him this extravagant price. And he was like, no, this pricing doesn't make sense. And they told him, US billionaire kid, you're not ready to buy a rocket. Get out of here. So, on his flight backward, he did the math. He took a sheet of paper. What are the foundational parts of a rocket? What does the body cost? What does the fuel cost? What does the engine cost? By the time he broke it down into fundamental blocks, he summed the cost up and realized that the cost of the individual parts of building a rocket, quote me if I'm correct, is about 2% of the total cost of the rockets they were selling to him. So why did we have that much margin? Because rockets are not reusable. So when they build a rocket and they send it to the space, the entire money is gone. Imagine aeroplanes are not reusable. Imagine how much the cost of flights will be. Imagine cars are not reusable. Imagine what the cost of one Uber trip would be. Can you imagine it? The same concept applied to rockets. So because when they send a rocket to space, that is all. You realize that, if we make a rocket reusable, then it will reduce the cost of space flights. Does that make sense, anybody? I'm going to give a second example. I was privileged to be a part of, the initial Student Venture Capital Grant Program by the federal government of Nigeria as one of its program managers. In that program, we selected about 45 young students, undergraduate students across universities in Nigeria to fund them with 50 million naira grants, all powered by the federal government and the Ministry of Education. During the boot camp, the selection boot camp, somebody came to me with a concern because we were mentoring them and preparing them for their pitch. And he said, hi sir, I'm building a startup called Palo, and I don't have a co-founder. Everybody has been telling me that I need to have a co-founder, and I might not win this pitch or this grant because I don't have a co-founder. And I said, tell me your reason for not having a co-founder. And he said, in this age of AI, I'm a developer. I already built the solution myself. But with AI, I can build it 3x more. I also have some experience in sales and marketing. One of my mentors at school once made me call Don Jazzy and try to sell him a cyber truck. And I did dial him, but he did not buy. And with AI, I can accelerate my marketing and sales skills. I think I can do all of these things by myself, and as a solo founder, I can go faster. Does that make sense? Does he have a case for being a solo founder? Why were people telling him not to be a solo founder? Because the narrative is, when you want to start a startup, find a co-founder. Nobody knows why. We just know that is how it is done. So, you have to do it that way as well. But he took it to first principles, broke it down to the fundamental blocks, and then rebuilt his reasoning and conclusion from there. I want to ask, do you understand thinking by analogy now? Do you understand thinking from first principles now? Now, how does that connect to our topic? How authenticity drives creativity in tech. In today's world, most solutions are just from analogy. And because most solutions are from analogy, one of the problems, like I said earlier, that we have in Nigeria and Africa is that three things. First off, there are problems everywhere, right? And in our career, we are here to solve problems. Somebody say problems. Problems. We are here to solve problems, right? So in solving those problems, because most of our leaders and most of the entrepreneurs that have gone before us depend on thinking from analogy. They either solve problems poorly. That means the problem is solved, but it is not properly solved. A good example is, tell me why we have, in most of Lagos roads, we have like a BRT lane, but only a bus provider that has limited number of buses can access that lane. For Christ's sake, it's an infrastructure. can you figure out a way to lease it out to other vendors as well so that more people, more commuters can use that road, right? So we have poorly solved problems. We also have wrongly solved problems. There's a problem, there's a solution, they don't connect. And most times, we also have problems that are not solved at all. Because when other people have not solved that problem before, there's nothing to copy from. So when US is not facing some of our local challenges today, we don't have anybody to copy from. Hence, some of our problems are not even attended to at all. Does it make sense? Because there's nobody to copy from. So, how would authenticity solve this problem for us if we are builders and contributors in the tech space? I want to introduce you to 4 concepts, and we'll just go over them one after the other. The first one is something I'm calling the components of authenticity. What do I call it? The components of authenticity. What does it mean to be authentic? Authenticity is more like alignment with your lived experiences, the things that you have interest in, and the things that you have the capacity to do. An alignment between all of those different things. Some of the components that makes up authenticity would be 1, your experiences. Tell somebody your experiences. Not everybody, almost nobody else on earth can copy your experience verbatim. Your experiences are uniquely yours. Does that make sense? They are uniquely yours. So the things you've done, the places you've been, the sufferings you've suffered, the enjoyments you've had, the things you know that others don't know, the job experiences that you have, they contribute to your authenticity. The other thing in the components of authenticity would be the things that you have an interest in solving. You know, there are some things we do, when we go about our daily life, there are some problems that are just uniquely, they uniquely attract us in a way that they don't attract any other person. You see some people always complaining about politics, while somebody else is always complaining about apps that are not functional. You're like, why are we not focusing on the same problems? The things that attract us, the things that interest us, most times are different. Now, those are some 2 components of authenticity. We can also include the things that we are able to build, right? Not everybody can build the things that you can build. Does that make sense? All right. Now, let's go to the second concept. Don't forget, we are trying to think from first principles. So I'm trying to give you some building blocks with which you can think from first principles. And it is called Ikigai. How many of you are familiar with the concept Ikigai? It is a Japanese concept that means the reason to live. The reason for living. It is made up of 4 parts, and Ikigai is the intersection of those 4 different parts. The first thing is what you love. Tell someone what you love. That is your passion. The second thing is what you can do. That is your skills. Tell someone what you can do. The third one is what the world needs. The problems that are in the world that needs to be solved. And you can call that impact. Tell somebody the problems that are in the world. And the 4th component of Ikigai is what can make you money. The things that can pay you. Tell somebody make money. So we can call that market value. The intersection of all these 4 things is what the Japanese people call Ikigai. That means you find the thing that you love, that you are good at, that the world needs, and you can earn from it so you can continue to sustain yourself. That intersection is what you should be doing. Authenticity. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? The third concept I'm going to introduce you to is the concept of polywork. In this age, we're always advised to niche down. Focus on one niche. Don't go too broad. But maybe that advice is the reason why we don't go too far. Let's pick up a biblical example. King David. I heard my pastor explain it this way. The thing that brought David an initial attention, or the thing that built David's portfolio, was that he killed a lion and a bear. That means he is a hunter, or a fighter, or a shepherd person that is very skilled, right? If David is going to niche down, he will continue hunting forever. But he doesn't stop there. He hears that Goliath is attacking the people of Israel, and he says, I'm going to fight him. And then he presents his portfolio. He did fight him. He won Goliath, but Saul began to dislike him because of the love and praises. Right? The next thing is Saul is ill, but David happens to be a musician. He can sing. And because of that, they invite him to the palace to play the instruments for Saul. So David is also a musician. And beyond all, the most popular thing we know him for was that he was a king. If you want to go theological, you can say he's a prophet, he's a psalmist, and many other things. But the summary is, David is David. And he had different expressions. And those different expressions came together to form David. Don't limit yourself. Tell somebody, don't limit yourself. Hence why I introduce myself as an entrepreneur, a product manager, and a program manager. I don't have to limit myself. If I can do those things well, why not? Does that make sense? And then, so the final concept I would introduce you to is, what does God say? What does God say? In Genesis 1, verses 26, he says, go into the world. He says, let us make man in our own image and let them have dominion. Say dominion. Why am I referencing that? What is the fundamental purpose that we have here on earth? Beyond every other thing that we can think of, maybe spiritual and all of those stuff, God actually asks us to have dominion. That means to take ownership of the things that are here and nurture them. In Genesis 2:15, he says, and God put man in the garden to nurture it. Tell someone to nurture it. So it means if there's a problem in Nigeria, God has instructed you to what? Nurture it. If there's a problem in your industry, God has what? Instructed you to what? Nurture it. At the very fundamental, we have an instruction to solve problems. We have an instruction to nurture the things around us, to make sure that the world is a better place. In Philippians, it says, it is I who works in you to will and to do. So it means, just like Steve Jobs, find the courage to follow your heart and your intuition. They somehow already know what you want to become. Every other thing is secondary. There seems to be something in us that works in us to will and to do. Does it make sense? Now, we've talked about 4 different concepts: authenticity, ikigai, polyworking, and what God says. How does that apply to authenticity and how it drives creativity in tech? Your story is your story. Your experiences are your experiences. Don't think from analogy. Don't do things because that is the popular thing. Combine these different components. What is a problem in the world? What are the shortcomings in the nation? What are the gaps in this industry that are yet to be filled? What are the skills I can learn or I already have that enables me to solve this problem? Hope when I solve this problem, I can make money from it to sustain myself, to keep solving it. All of these different components is what you put together. And don't limit yourself. You can be the developer in the product and also be the marketer. You can be the front-end developer, the DevOps person, and the UI UX designer. The limit is you. The limit is your skill. Don't define your story from analogy. Don't do it this way because another person is doing it that way. When I was in university, I noticed in my 200 level that because I studied applied and computational mathematics, I'm one of the best schools in Nigeria, University of First Choice and the nation's pride. And in my 200 level, I noticed it looks like this course is going to be a course in the job market. I might not find a job. So I probably need to what? Learn a skill that will position me better for the job market. Now, prior to this, my mom has been a teacher, and I have experience teaching and managing programs. Now, here am I observing that there's a need to teach people. I went into the tech space, I learned program management, I learned how to build websites, and fast forward to today, I'm building a tech startup where I'm applying my skills as a product manager to solve problems around something that I'm actually attracted to and interested in. That's where Talnts was from. Something that is unique to me. Something that I was uniquely positioned to see and observe. So here's my parting words to you. Stay hungry. But while staying hungry, stay true. Stay foolish. But while being foolish, be guided. And that's a popular quote from Steve Jobs, adjusted by me. Steve Jobs said, stay hungry,